If you want more alignment, you have got to start to remove some of the things that are distracting you, some of the things that are numbing you, some of the things where you're just going through the motions because you think you have to.
Hello and welcome to the Move the Chains podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Munsey, and I'm glad you're here with me today for this episode. Look, as an entrepreneur, best-selling author, keynote speaker, high-performance coach, I help executives and leaders take the next steps towards success. If you're someone who struggles with time management, anxiety, feeling overwhelmed, productivity, and even fitting or finding fulfillment in what you do, this episode is a must listen for you. We're joined today by a high performer in her own right, Erin Coupe, speaker, executive partner, author, and founder of I Can Fit That In, also the name of her upcoming book, November 5th. We'll talk about that. Erin helps high performers shift from burnout and busyness to clarity and fulfillment through keynotes, workshops, leadership programs. She guides individuals and organizations in transforming their draining routines into energizing rituals that unlock lasting impact. Erin's clients range from Fortune 100 companies to global associations, universities, professional sports organizations. Erin, this is going to be an awesome conversation. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
So we've chatted previously. You had me on your podcast, and I love how aligned we are on so much of mindset and high performance leadership. I'm curious to know, I guess, a lot about your background. Like, I know you're a high performer. I want to hear about what you did and how you drove that level of performance, but also sort of your aha moment that kind of started the shift and then through that transformation to where you are now.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mean, there's so much to that question because I would be remiss to your listeners to not really go back and explain where I come from, which is I grew up quite poor. My father was terminally ill since I was 5, which meant he couldn't work. And my mom had to work several odds and ends jobs to raise my siblings and I to raise the family. And so what that did is instilled within me, first of all, back then, a very scarce mindset. So I came from a place of lack and not having much and always comparing myself to everyone around me, thinking sort of, woe is me and I'm a victim to this. And what I realized is probably around, I'd say, early teenage years is that I actually have an opportunity ahead of me to create my own life. And it's hard to look at it that way because when you don't have a lot and you don't have a roadmap to follow or footsteps to follow, you are really on your own. You're kind of on this planet with no guidance and just have to figure it out. But that level of grit and perseverance is what I believe developed that really high performance mentality within me, because I realized, okay, I'm just going to have to work my butt off. I'm not given anything, and that's okay. That's my life. I just have to work really, really, really hard in order to achieve and accomplish. And of course, I set out to do everything society said to do. And I checked every single box and, found myself, put myself through college, found myself moving to New York City, which was a dream. I landed on Wall Street, not on purpose, by accident. Goldman Sachs was a client of mine, and I ended up working in some very hardcore finance roles, first being on the trading floor at Goldman. And so talk about high performance, talk about high achievement. I was one of 100 women in the firm to go through this Women's Leadership Accelerator program that was brand new in, 2008, and traveled the world for the firm and cost-cutting initiatives back in the downturn. I mean, it really was performing at the highest level. And my body started to break. My body literally started to give me all these signs that something is wrong and something is not only wrong, but I am not okay. It was debilitating stuff like, rashes that were unexplainable and had to be treated with steroids, and fainting spells all the time, appetite problems. I couldn't eat on Fridays because I had a crazy toxic boss who had a 1-to-1 with me every Friday at 4:00 for an hour. So that kind of stuff that I was going through was a part of my awakening, honestly, but I didn't know it. Hindsight's everything. When you're going through something, you don't really know exactly what it all means. But that was a start to me realizing I'm out of alignment and also starting to yearn for something different. And I'm going to be honest with you. I tried for a while to just fix the external world, right? Okay, I'll try a different job. So I had 2 more jobs at Goldman, and the last one being in Chicago. And I thought maybe that's the fix. I'll just move cities as well. That wasn't the fix. And then I changed industries and I became more aligned with the work that I was doing because I didn't have to work 14-hour days and just sit in an office because I had to be there. Like the work became more aligned with who I was, even in my corporate jobs. But what really started to wake me up is I questioned how I was treating myself every day. And that was a big aha moment because I realized I am not treating myself well. I am burning the candle at both ends. I am running around like a chicken with my head cut off for, at the time, my young toddlers, my husband, my home, all the projects, all the things, obligations that I had to manage every day, thinking that if I was just everything to everyone, eventually I'd be happy. And it was the opposite. So starting to make those, have those internal questions come up within me and then actually reflect on them was a big step in my process.
I love the way you phrased that. Initially, you focused on changing the outside world, right? And so then, as you now, and I'm sure in a lot of the work that you do, we may joke like, hey, you move cities or you change jobs or whatever else, like it's still you, right? Whatever problems you thought you were running from, they're internal. They're going to follow you just in a new city or with a new routine, whatever. So you said you started asking questions and you started focusing internal. What helped you shift your perspective and realize that those were the better questions to be asking?
Yeah. I tell you that story about my dad because it's a part of me, not from a grief perspective, but from an outlook on life. Mm-hmm. I always have felt this deeper connection to something beyond just the humans that we are. And maybe it was his death. Maybe it's just that I have a deep faith in spirituality and the fact that, we are profound beings, but we're not the end all be all. Something was just telling me for a very long time that I was meant to live my life differently. But I never listened to it until this one moment that I had in 2017 when I really started to look at myself in the mirror and ask those questions. I don't know what it was. I mean, honestly, you can call it an awakening. You can call it like a personal transformation or a reinvention. But my heart was speaking to me and I was actually listening to it instead of just always letting my head lead the show, which is what, as a high performer, as a high achiever, I was always letting my ego run the show. I was listening to everything that I call that voice in my head, Erica. I was listening to everything Erica said. She was driving the car. She's the one calling the shots. She's the one using the signals. Like it was all her until finally it wasn't. And I realized there was that deeper voice that I wanted to listen to. And it just meant that I had to do some work on myself because once I started to listen and ask those questions, I found things within me that needed healing, that needed attention, and that needed to change.
You've already mentioned 2 of them that I'd like to examine a little bit closer. You talked about the scarcity mindset, and then you talked about comparison. And I want to start with comparison because I think that's one that people maybe haven't heard as much. I learned this from a mentor of mine years ago, and he had what he called the 3 C's of toxic goals. It was compete, compare, and copy. And so we'll stick with comparison for now, but I'm curious, how did you realize that you were doing that? How did you realize that was, an issue, and how did you get past that?
Yeah. Well, I always felt inferior when I was on Wall Street. It was almost like everywhere I looked around me, everyone was an Ivy Leaguer. And I was like, well, I'm not from that pedigree. That's not me. And so therefore I am not as good as these people. I am lesser than. And I mean, what a crappy mindset to be in, because first of all, it's not true. It's a false narrative that was in my head. No one came around and said that to me. No one said you are less than us because you didn't go to Dartmouth or Yale or where. No one said that. It was just something within me that was an insecurity. And that's the really important part, is that in the work I do with a lot of people, I help them see their blind spots, which oftentimes are their insecurities. Those are painful. This is not fun stuff to look at within yourself. It is not like, it's not reading a novel on the beach. It is deep inner work. But when you look at your own insecurities and you go, gosh, because I have told myself these things, I have believed them. And because I have believed them, they have shaped the way that I show up in the world. They have shaped the way that my relationships are working or not working. They shape the way that I, believe in what's possible for myself or my own potential. And that's, from a comparison standpoint, that is just toxic is the word for it. It is toxic to yourself, and it ends up being toxic in your life.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I'd love to talk about identifying blind spots. We'll get to that as we get into some of like how you do the work that you do. But on the scarcity mindset side, what was that shift like for you?
That one was with me for a very long time. It was truthfully the hardest one that I had to, I would say, do the deepest work on.
Okay.
Because I was able to create my own life and be successful in a career, which meant I was earning money and I had a stable income and I had a stable life, which was great. It's a far cry from where I came from. And I'm very grateful for that and for the opportunities that I was able to take advantage of in my life. However, I also had to get past that belief that at some point the shoe will drop. Because that is what scarcity mindset does to us. That's what a mindset of lack does to us. Yeah. It makes us think, I don't know if you've ever read The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, but it makes us think that things can't be too good, because if they are, something bad is going to happen, because surely things can't be too good. And so it was scarcity for me once I was creating my own life and had my career and was earning money and all the things and felt like I was secure. It became more of this belief that something bad is bound to happen. And I'm not going to be able to stay in that, spot. Mm-hmm. In that spot, not even meaning just a job, but just stable.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So overcoming that was really difficult, especially with launching my own business. I launched my business in February of 2020. I mean, the time. That was a whole different story. But, with launching my own business, that belief for a while that I had before I actually resigned and hit play on the business, I was doing this work for 2 years on the side. I had clients, I had revenue coming in from doing the work. However, I had to get past the belief that if I leave the stability of what I was in, that I would not have something that people want, or I wouldn't have clients in the future, even though I have them now. A lot of those things in my mind were just those scripts playing out around scarcity.
Yeah. So when you work with people now that you identify that they have that scarcity mindset, I love the phrase that you use there, waiting on the shoe to drop, or that's one that I think I and other people see that. That one's easier to identify almost than what we might label scarcity mindset. So when you identify that somebody is thinking that way or operating that way, how do you help them shift out of that?
Yeah. So I call it a limiting belief. Mm-hmm. And a belief is nothing but a thought that you have multiple times on repeat. So that's the scary part, is that thoughts can quickly become beliefs. Because once you think something once and then your mind keeps going there, you believe it pretty darn fast. Equally so, and just as much as a powerful perspective on that, is that when you put something new in your mind and you make yourself think something new, that too can become a belief. That's the work. That's the work that most people don't do on their own. It's why they need guides and coaches to help them create new beliefs. Because our minds are, these reptilian brains, they're very outdated. The operating system they run on is extremely archaic, and our minds are skewed to the negative. We are going to hold on to the negative thought way more than we're going to search for putting the positive thought in. And so that's where the accountability to actually do that work is really important. So for myself, getting over that scarcity, that lack, and then the limiting belief of, I can't start my own business, all those things I was just telling you about meant I had to go in and purposely put essentially the opposite belief in my mind. And in order to do that, I had to think it, I had to write it, I had to look at it, I had to say it out loud. And I just had to do that with some repetition in order to start to believe it. So that's what I have people do.
Nice. I love that. As you talk through this, and again, like we've talked before, we're very much aligned on like our interest in and passion for the way the brain works and like kind of the science of high performance. I'm curious, like I know you also have talked to other high performers and athletes, and like I think right now we're talking about both the theory and the application of it. I'm curious, like with athletes who are applying these things but don't know the theory or the science, like for you, did you sort of find yourself doing the things first, or did you learn the science and then do the things?
Yeah. Did the things first for several years.
Yeah.
And then I took neuroscience courses at MIT through their executive management program.
Got it.
Because once I had done the work on myself, which is, it's not overnight. I mean, this stuff takes time, to really see the benefits. The benefits are intangible first, and then they're tangible. So in order to really notice them in your life, it just takes time. It takes repetition, right? It takes cadence, and patience. But once I started to notice shifts in my life, then I got really interested in, okay, well, I know it works, but why?
Yeah.
I want to know why does it work?
Yes.
So those neuroscience courses were really helpful for that. And then of course it's been helpful just to bring some of that, that science background into the work I do, into the book I wrote, into the methodologies I've created.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also know that you like to go for root causes. So I'm curious how you approach going into an organization, let's call it a Fortune 100 company, because not necessarily because of their revenue status, but to be in that category, I'd say 99% of them are of a certain size. And that's what I'm most fascinated in with this question is like, when you go into an organization of that size, I think you know as well as I do, you're going to, if you talk to 30 or 40 different people, you're going to get 30 or 40 different stories as to what the problem is here and what needs to be fixed and who's to blame and blah, blah, blah. How do you figure out the root cause and your course of action as soon as you walk in the door with a new client like that?
Yeah. So typically in those types of environments, I'm working with a specific team.
Okay.
So let's say it's a team of leaders and, it's a 15-person team. So maybe it's some leaders and then their direct reports. Sometimes it's high potentials that report to them. Very quickly, I can see first and foremost, who is sitting in the room with their arms crossed and sitting back in their chair like they're already their best self. Like they don't need to be in that room. That tells me right away that there's probably a really big ego there. And that one's going to be a hard nut to crack, right? The other thing is people who are disengaged, right? So who is just not engaging at all because a lot of times they're scared of saying something in front of someone else in the room. Or you sometimes have those leaders that are just not willing to be vulnerable in front of other people. So there's no transparency, which tells me there's a real lack of trust, right? So I have had to start at such bare, like basic fundamental stuff with people. And the place that I start in those environments is always self-awareness. Until you start to know yourself, you cannot fully know each other. And sometimes it just takes a solid 6 months of meeting once a month to get them more aware of their own behaviors, their own mindset, their own tendencies. Do you shut down in meetings like this? Do you take control? Like, what do you do, right? What do you do when you're nervous? Like to help people understand themselves is where I typically have to start. I can't just say, you're the problem, right? Or like, here's the problem in your overall company. You can't do it in organizations of that size because culture is set by each leader. I call it microculture.
Mm-hmm.
So each leader creates a microculture, and then those microcultures add up to the overall culture of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to start somewhere. And so I start with the self. And then from there, you can go to the team as a whole and how it is functioning or dysfunctioning.
It's amazing to me how many different people I talk to that do what we do, and almost unanimously, it starts with self-leadership or individual responsibility or whatever phrase or wording people want to use. But that is almost unanimously where it all begins. And there's got to be something to that if everyone is kind of coming at it from that angle. So when you're working with, like, I love the phrasing there of like the microcultures. I think that's so true. So if you're brought in and you're only working with, a team, maybe if it's a team of leaders, you're lucky to have leaders from multiple departments. And if you can get through to them, then, they're leading their different departments. But, the question is, how do you make sure that for the organization, all of those microcultures are aligned and in pursuit of whatever the organization's overarching, call it rallying cry or noble cause might be?
Yeah. So what I typically do is I have everyone create a few different statements, one being their own growth statement. And there's certain language I like for them to use. So they fill in the blanks, but there's certain language I like for them to use. So they'll create their own growth statement, which is, 6 months, 9 months, a year from now, we're going to look back at this and we're going to see what progress we've made towards that statement actually becoming true. So I always want those statements to feel like a stretch now. I want them to feel like they're not true now, because if they're already true, then what are we working on? Right.
Yep.
And then I have them also as a group, I have them create a growth statement for just overall our engagement together. So where are they going with this engagement? Why are they making this investment in time, energy, and resources? And that too should feel like a stretch for the group. And so we come up with that together. And then what we do is a values assessment. And that's values of the organization and it's values of each of their teams. So when you look at those and you see where's the misalignments, where are the alignments? Because there's always going to still be some alignment, but there's going to be things that are a little bit off. And when you see those alignments and misalignments, then create a growth statement overall with how they're moving closer towards the mission of the company, enacting the goals of the company, those kinds of things. So there's those 3 statements they create, and then we use those as our North Stars throughout the engagement.
You mentioned that there's a specific language that you want them to use. Explain to us why language is so important.
Ooh. So to me, language is creation. Language has energy. Every word has energy to it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just how the word is said. It's not just how the word is delivered. That does matter. Tone matters because that's also energy. Right. But every word has an energy behind it. So for example, for their personal growth statements, I have them start with I am. Because when you say it, you are already that. So to be abundant, you have to believe that you already are abundant. And if you believe you already are, by telling yourself that you are, you're more likely to be it, right? So there's a neuroscience aspect to this, but really it's about the underlying energy. Similarly, the word try kills momentum. I'm like, you will not use the word try in anything that we do in this room and anything that we do in our engagements. Like, we are not trying anything. We are taking action.
Yep.
We are doing, we are being, but we are not trying.
I'm laughing because I have a bit in my talks that I try as weak language. And I've posted about this before, but when I speak, I have a whole thing that I do. And I mean, this is why I asked the question, because I'm as much of a stickler for language as I think you are. And to what we were saying earlier, when you understand the neuroscience behind this, it's not semantics. It really does matter.
100% it matters. Yeah. I've got a whole chapter in my book that really talks a lot about
That's awesome.
Creation in general and the energy behind creation, and language is a piece of it.
That is awesome. I can't wait to read this. So you talked about language. How about identifying blind spots? You brought that up earlier, and I definitely want to hear how you help these individuals identify those blind spots?
Yeah. So, one of the first places I start is with their fears. What are they scared of? Right? Because we're not scared of being eaten by tigers. I mean, within context, like that's not what we're talking about in the corporate setting. So if we're not scared of being eaten by tigers or, displaced from our home, what are we scared of every day? Like every person has different fears within them, but those fears are controlling the narratives that are playing out in their head, right? Which is then that's where the insecurities stem from. So when they look at their fears, that's where we can start to identify blind spots, because the fears a lot of times are a fear of rejection, a fear of humiliation, a fear of not being good enough, a fear of being found out. Like it's this kind of stuff that people are fearful of. And when we identify like what's the main one or two that each person is struggling with, even if they don't realize they're struggling with it. And then we see what type of narratives are sitting on top of those. So what are some of the thoughts that they're having often, which are these beliefs? And then what narratives are playing out? Like when we start to see this stuff, that's where we uncover the blind spots. And it's not a very linear process. It's with each person, it's going to, it ebbs and flows. It kind of takes different paths and directions. It twists and turns. But what you get to is those deeper rooted fears and insecurities that are shaping their behaviors. Yeah. Or sometimes I say what's shaping their actions and their inactions, because the inaction is just as important as the action.
Absolutely. So part of I guess where the rubber meets the road with this kind of work, when we're going into working with, whether it's corporations or sports teams, whoever that is the implementation of the things that you talk about. So I'm curious, like what strategies or tactics have you discovered to ensure or at least encourage lasting change that, if you're there for a keynote, it's obviously harder than if you're working with them on an ongoing basis. But what does that implementation and lasting change look like?
Yeah. So every talk that I do, every workshop, I always give 3 to 5 actionable takeaways. And these are things that not only I've practiced, but that people that I've worked with for longer periods of time, whether they're in a group setting and it's coaching in a group setting, or I've worked one-to-one, or they've been in one of my cohorts. But these are things that I know work. And so those are very, very teachable, practical tools to apply that anyone can use. And I know that I'm not naive. In every audience, let's say it's an audience of 1,000 people, not everyone's going to take all 5. So I give 3 to 5, knowing that at least one will resonate with every single person. And then 2, 3, 4, 5 will resonate with more people. And so it's really, really important for lasting change that people actually practice it. I'm very clear on none of this stuff is going to change your life overnight. And I make a joke in all my talks. If there were a pill for this, or if it could be created, I would create it and I'd be on a yacht somewhere, not right here on stage with you. Right. And it's like, it is so true, because if you could just change your mindset, if you could just change your beliefs, your perspectives overnight, everyone would do it. We wouldn't need this kind of work. We wouldn't need guidance and tools and people to help us with this stuff. But that's not our reality, at least not on planet Earth. Right. So we need the tools and we have to practice them if we want change.
That's a great point. In terms of authentic self, I know that's another big one that you're helping, especially leaders, identify. You get a lot of pushback, especially from, like, as you said, the person whose arms are folded and they're leaned back and they feel like they're already living their best life. In helping them identify what that looks like and then stepping into it.
Less than you would think, but I have the funniest story about this. And I'm glad this one just popped up in my head when you asked that question, because I almost forgot about it. A few years ago, I was working with a group of engineers. There were 3 women and the rest were men. It was about 18 people total. And one of the men was about 5 years from retirement, so he's just looking to ride off into the sunset. He's been there for 32 years. He doesn't want to change the way he does anything. I get it. Right. But in this group setting on one particular day, we were talking specifically about authenticity. And he raised his hand. He said, well, if I'm just a jerk and I always act like a jerk, then that's being authentic because that's who I am. And I was like, well, I'm not going to say his name. I'll use Jim. That's not his real name. I was like, Jim, you and I are going to have to take that one offline because there's something way deeper under being the jerk. And that's the part that you're not wanting to see. And I said, but no, that's not being authentic. And, so it's those kinds of people. I'd say, my work, it's interesting. My demographic, when I work in a group setting, it's heavily male, right? Because pretty much every industry is male dominated, and that's okay. That's what I've always been in. And so I'm working with so many men when I'm in that corporate group setting. And I have tons of women that love to do my cohorts, men too, but those end up being more like 70-30 female to male. But you would think that men have a harder time with that authentic self. But this day and age, they really don't. Like, they want that deeper connection with who they really are. And, you saw the Scotty Scheffler interview recently, I'm sure, where, he's the best golfer in the entire world. He's a multimillionaire. Like, he's got every, accolade possible. And he's just like, this isn't fulfillment though. Like, what fulfills me, what energizes me, what moves my heart is my family, is like time with them and just being present in my life. And it's like, yeah, like that is because that is where you're connected with not just what's around you, but with yourself more deeply. And we're going to see more and more people wake up to that. That's my belief.
I agree with that. And I want to come back to fulfillment, but just to ask another follow-up on the authentic self, I think, or I guess when folks, it's one thing to say it, it's one thing to identify it. I think it's a whole other thing for someone who may not have been letting it show or kind of living into that authentic self. Like, how do you help people get comfortable taking the mask off or revealing their true self, however you want to phrase that?
Yeah, it's deep work. I mean, that does not happen overnight either. I mean, it's part of the transformation. Yeah. You have to first help people be self-aware. You have to help them lead themselves differently. And I do that with what I call rituals, not routines, right? Like, that's a big part of my book. It's about rituals. So how can they start to arrange their day around what fuels them and, stop living their life in a way that is just going through the motions, being on autopilot, just checking the boxes because they have to kind of mentality. Like, that is like a recipe for like disaster, not for change, not for transformation. So helping them start to change the way that they're living their life, because when they do that, they feel more confident. They feel better in their own skin. And then when some of those things start to help the fears and the insecurities rise to the surface so that they can be let go, they can be healed, they can be transformed into something better that serves them, not, weighs them down. That is where people start to actually feel like they're more authentic. They feel more like themselves. So you can't just say, this is exactly what to do to be authentic. Each person has to go through that journey. And then when they go through that journey and they start to realize, oh, that's who I am underneath that script that's played out. That's told me I have to act like this over here and act like that over there. When you realize that you're being consistent everywhere you go in your life, that's a pretty darn cool feeling. Oh, and by the way, what happens is that you get accepted in all those places too. And then you're like, wait a minute, that's the secret sauce, just being myself.
That's a really interesting point. And as soon as you say that, I'm realizing, like, I had a similar conversation with another mindset coach recently. And, we were talking about how neither of us set out to become, say, leadership coaches, or I don't even want to say expert, but to do the kind of work that we do in leadership. And it really started with our ability to lead ourselves and people recognizing that. And it's, again, this kind of ties back to like that foundation of leadership is, individual responsibility. But you can't have that without consistency, right? Consistency of your actions and alignment of those actions with, your values, right? And so when you demonstrate that to people, not only do they see you as a leader, but as you just said, like you're accepted. And I always joke with people, like, I'm a weirdo. Like, I am not a normal person. And the things that I do are not normal. And I'm okay with that. Like, this comes back to authentic self. Like, I'll phrase it when I'm speaking or teaching as, let your freak flag fly, right? Like, or I use the story that I like is whatever your favorite flavor of ice cream is, like, be that and don't be the watered down version of it, right? Like, if you like mint chocolate chip and you go into a store or coffee or whatever your flavor is, you don't want their safe, hedged bet version of it. Like, bring me the full thing. Like, whatever you are selling me, bring me that thing. And so, like, I think to your point about being accepted, like, I think about all the things that I'm reared with. And when I travel or I'm around new groups or different people that see this for the first time, like, they see the consistency. Because, like, if I'm doing it on the road, they know I do it at home and whatever. And it's like, nobody has a problem with my weird stuff. And I wish that there was an easier way to, almost like your pill analogy of, like, to immediately convey that to people struggling to take those steps and have that consistency. Like, whatever the thing is, like, if you want to quit alcohol or if you want to, eat healthier or whatever, like, nobody's going to think less of you for not having the donut at work or whatever. So.
Right. Right. Oh, it's so true. Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, if it were easy, everyone would just do it and we wouldn't have to have any of those conversations. But we all know, I mean, even you and I and the mindset coach you were just talking about, I didn't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to do this work. No, it was a journey of my own lived experience of moving through that.
Yeah.
And because of that lived experience, there's then so much to teach and to share, because then it becomes your passion and your mission that you want to help more people with exactly what it is you went through.
Yep. And on that note, I think that's a perfect segue into the next question is, like, you're clearly at a place where you have found, and I hate the word balance, but you're able to combine performance and productivity with fulfillment. What is, like, when you're trying to explain that to people, or help them find that on their own, like, what have you found helps others get to that place?
Yeah. I know the word balance has a bad rap, and I always say it's because it's been misconstrued. Mm-hmm. So it's not about how much we can do at the same time in our external lives. What balance is about the internal. Mm-hmm. And we can absolutely achieve balance internally. Balance internally is about being aligned. It is literally about moment to moment choosing your responses. It's about being present and not letting, some voice in your head run away with you and take you down the emotional drain of anxiety and stress and worry and all the things that it likes to do, but being present in the moment and then choosing where you give your time and your energy and attention. That is how we get to internal balance. And when you get to internal balance, that's where productivity and fulfillment meet, right? Because you're going, okay, I know that I'm super productive in, this part of my life right now, my work. And I know that in an hour, like, I'm picking my kids up from camp and I'm going to be fully present with them. And I'm good with all the choices that I make. I'm good with them because I'm also fulfilled by those choices that I make, right? Like, I'm not fighting against something. Mm-hmm. And I think, too many times what happens is that people have a hard time thinking that they can achieve any sort of fulfillment without stepping away from ambition. Like, I talk about ambition and alignment are possible. In fact, achievement is like, it soars when your ambition and alignment are in sync. Mm-hmm. So what I help people do in that sense is understand within themselves, where are you out of alignment? Where are you misaligned? Where do you feel like you are stretched so thin? And then what you have to do is you have to take things out of the equation. You have got to cut the noise. You've got to remove things because you're not going to get more hours in the day. But if you're going to be truthful with yourself and if you're going to want transformation, if you're going to want to get closer to your authentic self, if you're going to want to feel more fulfilled in life, if you want more alignment, you have got to start to remove some of the things that are distracting you, some of the things that are numbing you, some of the things where you're just going through the motions because you think you have to.
Mhm. All right. So now we got to come back to numbing, but I was going to ask you on a time management question, because I think this is one that I see this a lot. And so you gave the example of, okay, I'm doing this thing now, and then later I get to go pick up my kids and have time with my kids. So for these high performers or folks who may not have the level of fulfillment that they want, I think you alluded to one of the keys, and that's saying no or removing things. But how do you help people on the time management side? The person that has meetings all day and I mean, maybe how you were on the trading floor with, 10, 12, 14-hour days, and there's no room to pick up kids if you have kids at that point in your life.
Right. And some people, that is the case. Like their job won't allow for that or given on, their tenure or seniority or what have you. So in those instances, you've obviously got help, right? You've got places in your life. I mean, there were times in my life where I had, hired help because there just wasn't space in my life to go and do that. That said, one of the first things that I have people do, and I did this myself, I have them get up earlier. And it's so funny because if someone says they don't have enough time for things, I'm like, what time do you get up? Oh, I get up at like 6:45. I'm like, okay, you're going to get up at 6. And well, I can't. Well, what time do you go to bed? Oh, I go to bed at 12:30. Okay. Well, you're going to go to bed at 11. Like this is not hard stuff. This is not hard stuff. Like this is elementary level stuff. So, but when they say they don't have time for a 5-minute meditation, when they say they don't have time to reflect, when they say they don't have time to answer 3 questions a day for themselves, when they say they don't have time to go for a 20-minute walk or to do a 15-minute Pilates mat video, like whatever it is that they're after, I just don't believe it. Yep. I just don't believe it. And then, I can have them look at their phones and look at all of the usage and the apps. Oh, that one's fun.
Yes, it is.
How much noise, how much distraction. Yeah. Yep. That's a big one.
Yep. I saw a post the other day from Arnold, and he said, I can give you an extra 5 years on your life, but you might have to close this app to do it. And then as you swipe through all the photos, like a calculation of if you're on Instagram or social media for 2 hours a day and you multiply that over X number of years, it ends up being 5 years of your life.
Right.
That's like, I have this love-hate relationship with social media because I actually had a similar calculation in my book, and it was a great reminder to see that. But it's whether it's, if it's 2 hours of TV a night or an hour of TV and an hour of social media, that's 2 hours. And that ends up being like that math says, 5 hours of your life. And so imagine it drives me crazy. And to your point, like it's not hard. Like that is first grade level math. Like
it is.
If I need to get up at 5 a.m. and I want 8 hours of sleep, that means I have to go to bed at 9.
Yeah, exactly. I know when I first started this, I was getting up at 5:30. My kids were 1 and 2 and they didn't even sleep through the night. So I was like up a few times and then I was still making myself get up earlier. And I mean, it wasn't fun by any means, but I had to make myself interested in doing it because it was for the betterment of me. And of course, if I was becoming better, if I was working on myself so that I could transform and change the way I was showing up, I was going to be a better partner to my husband. I was going to be a better mother. I was going to be a better leader. All the things were going to improve. Yep. And I knew that. I just knew that. And so, I had to commit in some way, shape, or form to myself. And one of the things I did, I played a little trick with myself. I enjoy my morning coffee. And I started to make my coffee. And I would even I put it all in there the night before so that all I had to do was press the button, like right at 5:30. And then, I just stand there and watch it brew for the 4 minutes or whatever it was. And then I would sit down and I would do just a short meditation while it was kind of cooling off. And then it's just waiting for me and I can smell it. And it's like, that became a little trick of, okay, I can have an extra cup of coffee this morning because I'm getting up so early.
I love that you gave those examples. I was actually going to ask you what some of those tricks were that you played on yourself to find a way to enjoy it or be interested in it. Like you said, I think that's great language. Right?
Yeah. And then even like lighting a candle, because it's most of the year, it's fairly dark at that hour in the morning. And so I got really, really into just light a candle, and it's just so soothing, and it's quiet.
Mm-hmm.
No one was awake. I'm like, I love that. I love that time of day. I've gone through, those first couple of years, it was a ritual every morning where I was like, every single day, this is what I do,
Mm-hmm.
Monday through Thursday. Friday through Sunday, I gave myself a break and was like, I don't get up at 5:30, Friday through Sunday. But then over time, I've changed that time that I get up a little bit. I still go to bed early because I like to.
Yep.
But
talk a little bit about your flexibility with the routines and the rituals. That's another one where I feel like I see so many people put the power in the routine or ritual. What's the word I'm looking for? I won't spend all day trying to figure out the word, but so many people just get hung up on like they have to do this, and if they don't, they're not going to have a great day. And
you're rigid.
Yeah, and I really advise people against that, because again, you put the power in the routine, not in yourself. And so, talk about how you what are the mental gymnastics that you do to like make the flexibility okay and keep the power with you.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about this in my book too. It is so important for us to distinguish between routines and rituals. Mm-hmm. So to me, there's nothing wrong with a routine unless you become so rigid about it and it starts to control you. Mm-hmm. Because once it starts to control you, you are not getting the benefits of that routine like you otherwise would if it's something you choose because it nourishes you. It's something you choose because it's energizing to you, because it makes you feel more centered, more grounded, whatever it is, right? And rituals are, many are personal, but it can also be a ritual with a friend. It could be a ritual with your partner. It could be a ritual around how you make your meals, like all these different things, right? And I give tons of examples of how to design your own. But I like to say, let's remove that word routine, or just take your routines and turn them into rituals, which means transform them into rituals so that they are energizing, not depleting, so that you are flexible around them and that they can evolve with you rather than control you. And that's a big thing, is that people don't realize they get so depleted by the rigidness of their life. Like, I have to do this, I have to do that. And if I don't check that box, I failed. And like that mentality right there is it is weighing you down. It is making you emotionally distraught and you don't even know it. And then mentally, your thoughts are matching your negative emotions because you feel like a failure several days a week. Not saying every day, but probably 2-3 days a week. So you're failing some part of that routine that you think you're obligated to. And then you're depleted and exhausted because of that. So My whole thing is coming from that mindset and coming from that place of rigidity within myself, where I just thought I just had to do. And if I didn't, then I sucked. It's like not true. Right? So flipping that, transforming that into something that serves you, which is what the rituals do.
And I mean, just look at how quickly the way you explain that is pure gold, because you see how quickly that goes from, rigidity to then if you miss it, you start to have those thoughts of being a failure. And then what did you say earlier? A belief is a thought that you repeat in your head. So, if 2, 3, 4 days a week, you're thinking that you're a failure, you start to believe that. And it's like all of that comes from some self-imposed routine. Like it's absurd. So, yeah.
So true.
All right, Erin, we're coming up on the end. So I want to hit you with the question that all of our guests have to answer at the end of the show. You talked about the power of consistency earlier. So, the podcast is called Move the Chains. It's all about being consistent. What would your final piece of advice or best piece of advice be for somebody who wants to develop more consistency?
Yeah, well, I would say get up at a certain time in the morning and create a ritual for yourself that you do first thing in the morning. So no phone, no TV, no distractions. What is one thing that you can give to yourself to really set yourself up for success for that day. And I always say to people, it's something that you want to do that grounds you, that allows you to feel like you are connected with yourself and with even something deeper than yourself. So whether it's meditating or it's journaling or it's reading or it's writing, whatever, being creative, playing music, doesn't matter what it is, it's yours and it can change over time, but give yourself a little bit of time before the world takes control of you for the day.
I love it. And I do that myself. I know it's incredibly powerful. So if people listening aren't doing that, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Erin, where can folks get more of you and find your work? And I know we said the book is called I Can Fit That In. It's coming out November 5th of this year. This is 2025 when we're recording this, since this is a podcast and it lives forever. But where can people get more of you?
Yeah. So my website's erincoupe.com, erincoupe.com. And then I am authentically EC on Instagram or Erin Coupe on LinkedIn.
All right. And the book will be available on your site, or can they get it on Amazon or what?
Yeah, it'll be available for pre-order at the end of August on my website. So that's pretty soon. That's in just a few weeks, as of when we're recording this, Ryan.
Yes.
And once it's available for publication after November 5th, it will be everywhere that books are sold on retail sites.
Awesome. All right. So we'll grab that pre-sale link from you and put it in the description. So I think by the time this comes out, might be a week or two early, but we'll put it in the description. People can at least bookmark the page and go grab the book. So.
Awesome.
All right. Erin, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a really awesome conversation. For everybody listening, thank you for being here. Glad that you're a part of the Move the Change podcast, and continue to be excited about the conversations that we're having, the guests that we're bringing you here. As you know, every week we're going to bring you tips and tools on how to use Move the Chains in your daily life with real world examples from my life, coaching clients, friends, other high performers like Erin, and to see how these folks have their version of Move the Chains that fuels their success. So thanks for listening. Make sure you subscribe to the Move the Chains podcast wherever you listen so that you get notified of new episodes. And if you dig what you're hearing, please leave us a review and share the episode with somebody that you know would benefit from the things that Erin has shared with us today.